The arrival. The ship Val Shanner cut through the void of space, its silver hull glinting faintly against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Zalthar stood on the command bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display of the blue-green planet ahead. Earth. It looked peaceful, almost inviting. But to the captain, it was nothing more than another primitive world to explore and conquer. "Are we certain this planet is worth investigating?" Zalthar asked, his voice laced with skepticism. The ship's intelligence officer, Lyrakan, nodded, her scaled fingers gliding over the control panel. "Yes, Captain. The electromagnetic signals from this planet suggest intelligent life. Though their technology appears outdated. Their signals are crude, as if they're only now mastering basic communication." Zalthar smirked. Primitive, indeed. This was no threat to the Empire. "Prepare the scouting team," he ordered. "Let's see what these creatures have to offer." The crew worked efficiently, deploying a small vessel from the ship's hangar. A group of 5 explorers, armed with advanced weapons and scanners, descended towards the planet. From the bridge, Zalthar watched the shuttle disappear into Earth's atmosphere. The captain wasn't expecting much. Perhaps some interesting artifacts or biological samples, but it was protocol to investigate any planet showing signs of intelligent life. Minutes ticked by, and the crew on the bridge waited in silence. The shuttle was due to report back soon. Zalthar leaned back in his chair, watching the clock. "Captain," Lyrakan said suddenly, breaking the silence, "we've lost contact with the scouting team." Zalthar's head snapped up. "What do you mean, lost contact?" "They entered the planet's atmosphere, but the signal just vanished." Lyrakan's voice was uneasy, a rare emotion for her. She recalibrated the communication array, trying to re-establish the connection. "There's no interference. It's as if their systems were shut off." Zalthar frowned. "Perhaps they're experiencing technical difficulties. Keep trying to reach them." But as the minutes dragged on, an unsettling tension spread across the bridge. The crew exchanged nervous glances. They were used to exploring hostile worlds, but losing an entire team without a single warning was unheard of. Then, out of the silence, a sound crackled through the speakers. It was a transmission from the shuttle. A single blood-curdling scream that made even the hardened crew freeze in their tracks. The scream was followed by static, then silence. "Captain, what should we do?" Lyrakan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zalthar stood, his imposing figure casting a shadow across the bridge. "Prepare another team. I want answers." The second team was deployed with extreme caution. This time, they were equipped with heavier armor and surveillance drones to ensure constant communication with the ship. As they descended, the crew on the bridge monitored every movement through live video feeds. The alien explorers landed in a dense forest, their weapons raised. Everything seemed calm. Too calm. The team leader, Cathar, scanned the area, his thermal sensors picking up faint life signs in the distance. "We have movement," he reported back to the ship. "What kind of movement?" Zalthar demanded. Cathar hesitated. "It's strange. The life signs are scattered, but they're moving fast, almost as if they're circling us." The team advanced cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick undergrowth. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches blocking out the sunlight. The drones flew ahead, scanning for threats, but the results were inconclusive. Suddenly, one of the explorers screamed. The others turned just in time to see him vanish into a concealed pit, the ground giving way beneath his feet. The team rushed to the edge, peering down, but there was no sign of him. Only darkness and silence. "What happened?" Zalthar's voice boomed over the comms. "It's a trap," Cathar said, his voice shaking. "The ground. It's been tampered with. Someone, no, something, knew we were coming." Before they could process the loss, another team member cried out. This time, it was a massive log, swinging down from the trees, crushing him instantly. Panic set in as the remaining explorers realized they were being hunted. "Fall back," Cathar shouted, but retreat was impossible. The paths they had taken into the forest were now blocked by makeshift barriers of wood and stone, as if the forest itself was alive and intent on trapping them. On the ship, Xalthar watched helplessly as the live feeds turned to chaos. The crew members were shouting, their video feeds filled with the blur of movement and the sounds of weapons firing blindly into the trees. One by one, the feeds went dark until only static remained. "Lyrakan," Xalthar growled. "I want a full analysis of what just happened." Now, the intelligence officer worked furiously, but her findings made her scales pale. "Captain," she said, her voice trembling. "The traps, the precision, this isn't the work of a primitive species. Whoever is down there knew exactly how to target us." Xalthar's fists clenched. He stared at the hologram of Earth, his mind racing. This was no ordinary planet. These primitive creatures had just wiped out 2 teams of the Empire's best soldiers without showing themselves. "Captain," Lyrakan said softly, "what are your orders?" Xalthar's jaw tightened. He was not one to retreat, but this was unlike any mission he had faced before. "Send a message to the fleet. Tell them we need reinforcements. Whatever is down there, we're not leaving until we find out what it is." As the crew scrambled to obey, Xalthar kept his eyes on the planet below. Earth had seemed so harmless, so insignificant. But now it was clear. This planet held secrets, deadly secrets, and the Empire had just awakened them. The first encounter. A second shuttle descended into Earth's atmosphere, carrying a team of the Empire's most skilled operatives. Unlike the first group, this team, led by Commander Vaylor, specialized in high-risk extractions. Their mission was clear: locate any survivors from the first team, gather intelligence, and return to the ship. As the shuttle broke through the clouds, the operatives peered through the viewport at the dense forest below. It seemed serene, untouched, an illusion they now knew to be dangerous. Vaylor tightened his grip on his pulse rifle, his sharp instincts on high alert. "We land, we secure the perimeter, and we move fast," he barked, his voice cold and commanding. "This is a retrieval mission, not an exploration. Stay sharp." The shuttle touched down in a clearing, its landing thrusters blowing leaves and dust into the air. The operatives disembarked quickly, their movements precise and silent. Drones hovered above them, scanning the area for threats, while a technician set up a relay to maintain constant communication with the mothership. A chilling discovery. As they advanced into the forest, the team noticed the eerie quiet. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The trees, with their twisted branches and gnarled roots, seemed to lean closer as the group moved deeper. The first sign of trouble came when one of the operatives stumbled upon a strange device half buried in the dirt. It looked primitive, made of steel and wires, with no clear purpose, but something about it felt off. "Commander," the technician called out, scanning the object with his device. This is a decoy. It's emitting a false signal. Someone wanted us to find this." Vaylor's eyes narrowed. "Destroy it. Move on." Before they could act, a chilling sound echoed through the forest, a long, high-pitched whistle, almost like a signal. The team froze, their weapons raised. The whistle was followed by rustling in the trees above. Something, or someone, was watching them. An unseen enemy. "Eyes up," Vaylor ordered. The operatives scanned the treetops, but all they saw were shadows shifting between the branches. One of the drones buzzed upward to investigate, its camera feed transmitting directly to the team's visors. The feed showed nothing at first, just leaves and branches swaying in the wind. Then, without warning, the drone's camera caught a glimpse of something. A face. It was human but painted with mud and leaves, its eyes cold and calculating. Before the team could react, the drone feed cut out. "They're using the terrain against us," one of the operatives muttered, his voice shaking. This isn't random. They're testing us, Vaylor said grimly. Keep moving. The team pressed forward, their movements cautious and deliberate. But the forest seemed to change around them. Paths they had just walked were now blocked by fallen trees. Strange symbols carved into the bark seemed to follow them, their meaning unknown but unsettling. The lost team. Finally, they stumbled upon the remains of the first scouting team. Their gear was scattered, their advanced weapons broken and discarded like toys. The bodies, what was left of them, showed no signs of traditional combat. Instead, it was as if nature itself had claimed them. Vines wrapped tightly around their limbs, and their faces were frozen in expressions of sheer terror. Report this back to the ship, Vaylor said, his voice tight with anger. We're dealing with a level of intelligence we didn't anticipate. As the technician prepared the transmission, another whistle pierced the air, this time closer. The team spun around, their weapons ready, but the forest remained silent. Too silent. Then came the first attack. A sharp projectile, no larger than a knife, shot out from the underbrush and struck one of the operatives in the neck. He collapsed instantly, his body convulsing as a strange black fluid spread from the wound. Ambush, Vaylor shouted, opening fire into the trees. The rest of the team followed suit, their weapons lighting up the forest. But their attackers were fast, inhumanly fast. Figures darted between the trees, their forms barely visible. The team's advanced targeting systems couldn't keep up. The turning point. Vaylor realized too late that they were outmatched. The attackers weren't relying on brute strength or superior technology. They were using strategy, exploiting every weakness in the Empire's training. Traps hidden in the ground detonated, sending shrapnel into the air. Logs swung down from the trees, crushing anything in their path. The operatives fell one by one. Regroup at the shuttle, Vaylor ordered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was hopeless. The shuttle, their only way out, erupted into flames in the distance, a clear sign that their enemies had anticipated their retreat. Vaylor and the last surviving operative fought their way back to the clearing, their weapons nearly depleted. When they arrived, they found the shuttle's ruins surrounded by figures. Humans, their bodies painted in camouflage, their eyes burning with determination. "You think we're primitive," one of the humans said, stepping forward. His voice was calm, almost mocking. "But you forget one thing. This is our world, and we know how to defend it." The final stand. Vaylor raised his weapon, prepared to fight to the death, but the human leader raised a hand. "No need to waste your life, alien," he said. "You'll deliver our message instead." The commander hesitated. He could see now that this was no ordinary species. These humans weren't just survivors. They were predators, skilled and merciless. "What message?" Vaylor growled. The human's smile was cold. "Tell your people, Earth is not for the taking. If you return, we won't just defend. We'll hunt." As Vaylor was forced to retreat into the forest, his mind raced. He had never encountered anything like this before. Primitive, perhaps. But these humans had proven themselves to be something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The hunters become the hunted. Commander Vaylor sprinted through the dense forest, his breathing labored, his pulse rifle clutched tightly in his hands. His remaining operative, a sharpshooter named Zarek, followed closely, scanning the terrain with wide, panicked eyes. The forest seemed alive, every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs a potential threat. They had lost their entire team, their shuttle, and their hope of escape. "This is not a retreat," Vaylor said, his voice sharp despite his exhaustion. "This is survival. We'll regroup and send a signal to the mothership." "Commander, regroup where? This forest is a death trap." Zarek snapped, his voice trembling. Vaylor didn't answer. He was too focused on staying alive. The humans weren't chasing them like a conventional enemy. They were stalking them, silent and unseen, like predators toying with prey. Unseen traps. They stumbled into a small clearing and paused to catch their breath. Zarek knelt, setting up a portable scanner to detect life forms. The screen lit up with red blips surrounding them. Too many blips. "They're everywhere," Zarek whispered, his voice barely audible. Vaylor's instincts screamed at him to move, but before he could speak, a soft click sounded beneath his foot. He froze. Looking down, he saw a crudely built device, a primitive landmine. The humans weren't just using traps. They were luring them into them. "Don't move," Zarek hissed. He crouched down, examining the device. "I can disarm it." Vaylor stayed perfectly still as Zarek worked, his hands trembling as he dismantled the simple yet effective explosive. Just as Zarek removed the trigger, a faint whistle cut through the air. It was the same sound that had signaled their doom earlier. "They're here," Vaylor muttered, gripping his rifle tightly. A sudden explosion rocked the clearing as another trap detonated nearby, sending debris flying. Zarek was thrown back, his armor absorbing the brunt of the blast. But his scanner was destroyed. "We need to keep moving," Vaylor shouted, dragging Zarek to his feet. The human strategy. As they pushed deeper into the forest, Vaylor began to notice a disturbing pattern. The humans weren't relying on luck. Every step they took seemed designed to funnel them into an ambush. The traps weren't random. They were part of a larger strategy. "These creatures, they're not just fighting us," Vaylor said, his voice grim. "They're studying us." "Studying us," Zarek repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. Vaylor nodded. "They're testing our responses, learning our weaknesses. This isn't just defense. It's calculated warfare." Zarek's face paled. "But they're primitive. Their technology means nothing," Vaylor interrupted. "They don't need technology when they have terrain, strategy, and patience." As if to prove his point, a series of sharp, piercing whistles echoed around them, followed by a low rumble. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Suddenly, massive trees, rigged with explosive charges, toppled around them, cutting off their path forward and forcing them into a narrow canyon. The canyon trap. The canyon was dark and claustrophobic, the high walls blocking out the sunlight. Vaylor didn't like it, but they had no choice. The only way out was forward. "This feels like a trap," Zarek muttered. "It is," Vaylor said bluntly. "But we can't stop." The narrow passage forced them to move single file, making them easy targets. As they advanced, the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence settled around them. Even the ever-present rustling of the forest was gone. Then, from the shadows, came the first attack. A spear, handcrafted but deadly, shot out of the darkness, narrowly missing Vaylor's head and embedding itself in the canyon wall. Before they could react, another spear struck Zarek's leg, piercing his armor. He cried out in pain, collapsing to the ground. Vaylor fired blindly into the shadows, his pulse rifle lighting up the darkness with each shot. But their attackers didn't retreat. They moved closer, their footsteps silent, their forms blending seamlessly with the canyon walls. Vaylor grabbed Zarek, dragging him behind a boulder for cover. "Hold still," he said, tearing the spear from Zarek's leg. The sharpshooter gritted his teeth, his face pale. "We can't win this," Zarek gasped. "They're everywhere." "We don't need to win," Vaylor said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We just need to survive." The hunter reveals itself. As the humans closed in, Vaylor noticed something odd. They weren't killing them outright. Instead, they were hurting them, pushing them deeper into the canyon, closer to an unknown destination. It was as if they wanted them alive. But why? Finally, the canyon opened into a massive underground cavern. Vaylor and Zarek stumbled inside, their weapons raised, their breaths ragged. The cavern was filled with strange structures, simple but effective shelters built from wood and stone. Weapons, crude yet deadly, were stacked neatly along the walls. In the center of the cavern stood a group of humans, their bodies painted with mud and leaves, their eyes glowing with determination. They didn't look primitive anymore. They looked like warriors. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure with a hardened face and piercing eyes. He carried no weapon, but his presence was enough to make Valor hesitate. "You've done well to survive this long," the human leader said, his voice calm yet cold. "But this is where your journey ends." Valor raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What do you want?" The human smiled faintly. "We are the defenders of this world. And you are trespassers." Before Valor could respond, the human gestured to the others. In an instant, the warriors raised their weapons, not to kill, but to trap. Nets made of steel and vines dropped from above, pinning Valor and Zarek to the ground. "You think we're primitive," the human leader said, crouching beside Valor. His eyes were cold, his voice dripping with disdain. "But we've been watching your kind for centuries, studying you, learning your weaknesses." Valor struggled against the net, but it was no use. He looked up at the human, a mixture of anger and fear in his eyes. "What do you plan to do with us?" The human's smile widened. "You'll see. But first, you're going to send a message to your people. Let them know what happens when they invade Earth." The human weapon. The cavern was silent except for the faint crackling of torches lining its walls. Commander Valor and Zarek lay bound in nets of steel-laced vines, their alien muscles straining against the bindings, but it was no use. The humans had thought of everything. Their captors stood silently, watching them with unnerving calm. The human leader, the one with the piercing eyes, crouched before Valor. "Your people will come looking for you, won't they?" he asked, his tone almost conversational. Valor glared back. "They'll come with an army. When they find out what you've done, they'll meet the same fate as you." The human interrupted smoothly. "Do you think you're the first to try this? We've seen your kind before." Valor's anger was replaced by confusion. "What are you talking about?" The leader stood and motioned to a group of humans in the corner. They stepped forward, carrying a strange object, a piece of alien technology that Valor recognized immediately. It was an Imperial beacon designed to call for reinforcements. "This is yours, isn't it?" the leader asked, holding the device up. "We found it years ago, the last time your kind tried to explore our world." Valor's blood ran cold. "That's impossible. The Empire has no record of contact with this planet." The leader chuckled. "Of course not. Do you think we'd let your people leave with their lives? Every ship that's come here has been destroyed or captured." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "We've studied your technology, your tactics, your biology. Every weakness, every strength. And now, we use it against you." The truth about Earth. Valor's mind raced. This wasn't just a backward, isolated planet. The humans had been preparing for centuries, turning Earth into a fortress without anyone in the galaxy noticing. He exchanged a glance with Zarek, who was barely conscious but still listening. "You've reverse-engineered our technology," Valor said, piecing the truth together. "That's how you've stayed hidden." The human nodded. "And perfected it. While your empire grows fat and complacent, we honed our skills. Every invasion attempt only makes us stronger." One of the humans brought forward a holographic projector and activated it. Images flickered to life in the air. Alien ships crashing into Earth, Imperial soldiers ambushed in dense jungles, massive orbital weapons constructed from salvaged alien parts. It was a chilling display of humanity's resilience and ruthlessness. "But why?" Valor demanded. "Why go to such lengths? Your species should have joined the galactic community by now." The leader's face darkened. "Your galactic community tried to enslave us centuries ago. You came with promises of peace and progress, but we saw through the lies. We fought back then, and we've been fighting ever since. A living weapon." As the human spoke, Zarek stirred, his voice weak. "Commander, look." He nodded toward a figure approaching from the shadows. It was a human, but unlike any Vaylor had seen before. This one wore sleek armor infused with alien tech. Blue energy pulsed along its seams, and the helmet's visor glowed with an eerie light. The figure moved with inhuman precision, its steps unnaturally silent. The leader smirked. "You're looking at the future, a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and your stolen technology. Meet our weapon." The figure stopped in front of Vaylor, its visor scanning him. Vaylor felt a strange sensation, like his very thoughts were being read. "What is this?" he asked, his voice faltering. "It's not what," the leader corrected. "It's who." "A volunteer. A soldier willing to sacrifice everything to defend this planet. Enhanced by your technology and strengthened by our will." Vaylor realized with horror that this wasn't just an experiment. It was a prototype, a new breed of warrior designed specifically to counter alien invaders. The message. The leader crouched beside Vaylor again. "You're going to help us," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You'll send a message to your people. Tell them to leave Earth alone. Tell them what happens to those who don't." Vaylor clenched his jaw. "I won't betray my people." The leader shrugged. "That's your choice. But let me make one thing clear. If your fleet comes here, they'll find nothing but ashes. Earth will survive, no matter the cost." The enhanced soldier stepped forward, placing a device against Vaylor's neck. It hummed softly, and Vaylor felt a strange warmth spreading through his body. His vision blurred, and he realized too late that the humans weren't just asking for his cooperation. They were taking it. "What are you doing to me?" he gasped. "Making sure you deliver our message," the leader said, standing. "And if your people don't listen, we'll make sure the entire galaxy hears it." A glimpse of power. As Vaylor's consciousness faded, he saw glimpses of Earth's defenses. Orbital weapons powered by alien cores, stealth fighters built from salvaged Imperial ships, and soldiers like the one standing before him. An army of enhanced humans ready to strike fear into any invader. For the first time in his life, Vaylor felt true fear. The Empire had underestimated this planet, and now they were paying the price. The plan. On board the Val Shanner, the crew was in disarray. Captain Zalthar paced the command bridge, his frustration palpable. 2 teams were lost, and the last transmission from Commander Vaylor was an ominous silence. Lyra Ken, the intelligence officer, monitored the scanners relentlessly, but the planet offered no clues. "Status on the reinforcements." Zalthar barked. "They're en route, Captain," Lyra Ken replied, her voice tight with tension. 3 battleships and 2 carrier fleets. ETA. 6 hours. Zalthar nodded. Reinforcements were their only hope. Whatever was happening on this cursed planet, it was unlike anything they had faced before. "Deploy the aerial drones," he ordered. "Sweep the surface. I want every inch of that planet mapped before the fleet arrives." The drones descended, their advanced cameras capturing images of the dense forests and vast oceans. But as the feed returned to the ship, something strange happened. The images were scrambled, distorted by static. One by one, the drones went offline. "This isn't natural interference," Lyra Ken said, her hands trembling over the console. "They're jamming us." "How is that possible?" Zalthar demanded. "Their technology is primitive." Lyra Ken hesitated. "It's not. They're using our technology." The unexpected transmission. As Zalthar prepared to launch a 3rd team, a sudden alert filled the bridge. A transmission was coming through from the planet. "Patch it in," Zalthar ordered. The holographic projector flickered to life, and the image of Commander Vaylor appeared. He looked battered, his armor scorched, his eyes filled with an emotion Zalthar rarely saw in his elite soldiers. "Fear." "Commander," Zalthar said, his relief tempered by suspicion. "Report. What happened down there?" Vaylor's voice was calm, too calm. "Captain, Earth is not what we thought. These humans, they are not primitive. They are predators. Zalthar leaned forward, his frown deepening. Explain yourself. Vaylor hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. They've been preparing for us. For centuries, they've studied us, reverse-engineered our technology, and turned it against us. They're not just defending their planet. They're waiting for a chance to strike back. Lyrakan whispered, "This could be a trap, Captain." But before Zalthar could respond, Vaylor's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing. "Do not send reinforcements. If you value the Empire, you will leave this planet immediately. Earth is a graveyard for invaders." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. A fateful decision. What was that? Zalthar growled. Was that truly Vaylor, or was it these humans speaking through him? Lyrakan analyzed the transmission, her face pale. "Captain, there's evidence of neural interference. The humans, they've tampered with him." Zalthar slammed his fist on the console. "They've turned one of our best against us. This planet is more dangerous than we imagined." "Captain," another officer chimed in, "if what Vaylor said is true, sending the fleet could provoke a war we're not prepared for." Zalthar scowled, his pride warring with his instincts. Retreat was not the Empire's way, but this was no ordinary foe. "No," he said finally. "We don't retreat. We adapt." The counterattack. Zalthar devised a new strategy. Instead of a full-scale assault, they would deploy an orbital strike, targeting the planet's surface with precision plasma bombs. The goal was to destroy key locations without engaging the enemy directly. "Prepare the weapon systems," Zalthar ordered. "We'll neutralize them from above." The ship's cannons locked onto Earth's surface, targeting the largest energy signatures. But as they prepared to fire, the ship's systems began to malfunction. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, and the targeting computers went offline. "Captain," Lyrakan shouted, "our systems are being hacked." "What? That's impossible," Zalthar roared. But it wasn't. The humans had infiltrated their systems, using the same technology the Empire had once believed to be their strength. The ship's lights flickered, and an eerie silence fell over the bridge. Then, a new transmission appeared on the projector. This time, it wasn't Vaylor. It was the human leader. The message. The human's face was calm, almost smug. "You brought this on yourselves," he said. "We warned you to leave, but you refused to listen." Zalthar clenched his fists. "Do you think your tricks will save you? When the fleet arrives, your planet will be ash." The human chuckled. "Fleet? What fleet?" Zalthar froze. The human gestured, and an image appeared on the screen. The Empire's reinforcements, still hours away, surrounded by Earth's hidden orbital defenses. Massive satellites, disguised as harmless debris, were now armed and active. "You see, Captain," the human continued, "we don't need to fight you on the ground. Your reinforcements will never make it here. And as for your ship..." The Val Shanner shuddered violently as explosions rocked its hull. The humans had activated sleeper devices hidden aboard the ship, planted years ago when the Empire first began exploring Earth. The escape. "Abandoned ship," Zalthar shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The crew scrambled for escape pods as the ship began to break apart. Zalthar and Lyrakan made it to a pod just as the main reactor exploded, sending debris scattering into space. As they hurtled away from the doomed ship, Zalthar stared at Earth through the viewport. It looked so small, so peaceful, yet it had just claimed another victim. "We underestimated them," Zalthar muttered, his voice filled with bitterness. "And we paid the price." The turning point. The escape pod drifted through the void, silent except for the hum of its life support systems. Inside, Captain Zalthar gripped the armrests of his seat, his four eyes fixed on the shrinking image of Earth. The once mighty Val Shanner was now a cloud of debris, and with it, the last vestiges of his pride. Lyrakan sat across from him, working frantically at the pod's terminal. I'm picking up faint distress signals from other escape pods. A handful of us made it out. Good, Zalthar muttered. Rendezvous with them. We need to regroup. Lyrakan hesitated. Captain, the reinforcements. What about them? Zalthar snapped. They're gone. Every ship in the fleet, destroyed. Earth's orbital weapons hit them before they could even raise shields. Zalthar closed his eyes, his mind reeling. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were dismantling the Empire's might with cold, calculated precision. A hidden ally. As they drifted, Lyrakan picked up a faint signal. It wasn't Imperial, it was human. Captain, we're being hailed, she said cautiously. Zalthar growled. Ignore it. I can't, Lyrakan replied. They've overridden our comms. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the face of the human leader. He looked calm, almost amused, as if this entire conflict were nothing more than a game. Captain Zalthar, the human said, his tone unsettlingly cordial. I see you've survived. Impressive. Zalthar glared at the projection. If you've contacted me to gloat, you've wasted your time. Not gloating, the human replied, offering an opportunity. Lyrakan frowned. What kind of opportunity? The human's smile widened. To live. Surrender, and we'll allow you and your crew to leave our system unharmed. Resist, and we'll finish what we started. Zalthar's claws dug into the armrest. You expect us to trust you? No, the human admitted. But trust has never been necessary. Only survival. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Zalthar and Lyrakan in tense silence. A desperate plan. We can't trust them, Lyrakan said. They'll kill us the moment we surrender. Zalthar stared out the viewport, his mind racing. Then we don't surrender. Lyrakan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Zalthar turned to her, his eyes burning with determination. The humans have exploited our arrogance, our reliance on technology. But they've underestimated one thing. What's that? Desperation. Zalthar said grimly. Desperate creatures are the most dangerous. He leaned over the terminal, activating the pod's manual controls. There's a derelict Imperial outpost on the far side of this system. It was abandoned decades ago, but it might still have functional weaponry. And you think we can take on Earth with a few scraps from an old base? Lyrakan asked, incredulous. Zalthar's gaze hardened. We don't need to win. We just need to hurt them. The derelict base. The escape pod reached the outpost, a shadowy, rusted structure orbiting a barren moon. The station was barely operational, its systems flickering to life only after Zalthar manually rewired the power core. Inside, they found what they were looking for, a cache of prototype weapons. Among them was a weapon known only in Imperial records as the Rift Lance, a device capable of opening small, unstable wormholes. It was highly experimental, banned after a test destroyed an entire moon. This could work, Zalthar said, inspecting the weapon. It could kill us all, Lyrakan warned. Zalthar smirked bitterly. That's the beauty of desperation. What have we got to lose? The final assault. With the Rift Lance mounted on a commandeered drone ship, Zalthar and Lyrakan launched their final assault on Earth. The drone slicked past the planet's defenses, its stealth systems barely holding up against the humans' advanced scanners. As the drone entered Earth's atmosphere, Zalthar activated the weapon remotely. The Rift Lance fired a beam of crackling energy into the planet's surface, creating a small but highly unstable wormhole. The wormhole began pulling in everything around it, trees, rocks, even entire buildings. On the mothership, the human leader watched the destruction with narrowed eyes. Clever, he muttered, but not clever enough. The counterstrike. Before the wormhole could grow, Earth's defenders activated a countermeasure, a network of EMP satellites that disabled the drone and destabilized the Rift Lance. The wormhole collapsed in on itself, leaving a massive crater but sparing the planet from total destruction. On the derelict outpost, Zalthar and Lyrakin watched the failure in grim silence. "They stopped it," Lyrakin said, her voice hollow. Zalthar slumped in his seat, defeated. "They're not just defending their world," he said softly. "They're protecting the galaxy from us, a new kind of enemy." As the humans prepared their counterstrike, Zalthar made a final, desperate decision. He transmitted a message to the Empire, warning them not to send more ships. "Earth is not a planet to conquer," he said. "It's a weapon. And the longer we push them, the sharper it becomes." The human leader intercepted the transmission but allowed it to go through. He smiled faintly. "Let them spread the word," he said. "Let the galaxy know. Earth is off limits." As the transmission ended, Zalthar stared at the fading image of Earth. He had come expecting an easy victory. Instead, he had found something far more dangerous, a species that refused to bow. The warning. The escape pod drifted silently into neutral space, its thrusters sputtering as it neared the coordinates of a small Imperial relay station. Inside, Zalthar sat hunched over the comms terminal, his claws trembling as he finalized his transmission. "Attention, Imperial High Command," he began, his voice hollow. "This is Captain Zalthar of the Val Shanner. Earth is not a target. It is a trap. Abandon all plans of conquest. If you send more forces, you will lose more than just ships. You will lose the Empire itself." Beside him, Lyrakin was silent. Her once commanding demeanor had been replaced by a quiet resignation. The defeat they had suffered was more than just military. It was existential. "They'll call you a coward," Lyrakin said softly. "They'll say you abandoned your duty." Zalthar turned to her, his eyes weary but resolute. "Let them. Better a coward than a fool. Earth prepares." On the surface of Earth, the human leader stood in the command center of an underground fortress. Screens displayed the latest data from their orbital defense grid, as well as intercepted communications from the retreating Imperial forces. The leader's expression was unreadable. "Do you think they'll listen to his warning?" one of his officers asked. The leader shook his head. "No, empires rarely listen to reason. They'll send more ships, bigger fleets, stronger weapons. But it doesn't matter. Every invasion makes us stronger." He turned to the officer, his eyes sharp. "Activate Project Sentinel. It's time the galaxy sees what humanity is truly capable of." The officer nodded and began issuing orders. Across the planet, hidden facilities roared to life. Massive hangars opened, revealing sleek, hybrid starships armed with technology reverse-engineered from countless alien incursions. Orbital weapons platforms powered up, their targeting systems scanning not just the surrounding space, but distant systems where future threats might arise. The Galactic Ripple. Meanwhile, Zalthar's warning spread across the galaxy, transmitted through Imperial channels and intercepted by countless other species. At first, it was dismissed as a desperate ploy from a disgraced captain. But then, rumors began to circulate, whispers of ships vanishing near Earth, of entire fleets destroyed by an enemy the Empire had underestimated. In the halls of the Galactic Council, debates erupted. Earth had long been considered a backwater world, its inhabitants insignificant. Now, it was clear that humanity was anything but. One counselor, a towering reptilian, leaned forward. "If these humans are as dangerous as the Empire claims, they could become a threat to all of us. We must act." Another counselor, a small, insectoid being, clicked its mandibles nervously. "Act how? If the Empire couldn't subdue them, what hope do we have?" The chamber fell into uneasy silence. The last stand. Weeks later, a massive Imperial fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, ignoring Zalthar's warnings. The armada consisted of dreadnoughts, carriers, and swarms of fighter ships. It was the largest military force the Empire had ever assembled for a single engagement. The human leader watched from Earth's command center as the fleet appeared on the monitors. He nodded calmly. "Begin the operation." The response was swift and precise. Earth's orbital defense platforms unleashed volleys of energy beams, each one calculated to disable rather than destroy. The humans didn't want to annihilate their enemies. They wanted to make a statement. On the ground, hybrid starships launched into the sky, their engines blazing with alien and human technology combined. The human pilots were relentless, their tactics unorthodox, their maneuvers unpredictable. Imperial ships fell one by one, their crews overwhelmed by the ferocity of the attack. But the real weapon was still to come. The warning becomes a promise. As the battle raged in orbit, a single human ship emerged from a hidden base on the dark side of the moon. It was massive, larger than any dreadnought, and its hull shimmered with an otherworldly glow. This was humanity's trump card, the Sentinel. Equipped with weapons powered by energy siphoned from unstable wormholes, the Sentinel was a terrifying blend of human innovation and alien ingenuity. Its first shot vaporized an Imperial battleship in an instant. The second created a gravitational wave that disabled an entire fleet. On board the lead Imperial dreadnought, the Admiral watched in horror as his forces were decimated. He ordered a retreat, but it was too late. The Sentinel fired again, and the remaining ships were left powerless, drifting in orbit like leaves on a pond. The human leader appeared on every Imperial screen, his voice calm but firm. "This is your final warning. Earth is not a battleground. If you come again, we will not just defend. We will retaliate. And we will win." The Empire reels. The few surviving Imperial ships limped back to their home systems, their crews too shaken to speak of what they had seen. News of the battle spread quickly, shaking the Empire to its core. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most powerful force had been humbled. In the Imperial Senate, debates erupted. Some called for vengeance, demanding another assault on Earth. Others argued for caution, fearing humanity's growing power. But one thing was clear. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The new order. Back on Earth, the human leader addressed his people. His voice echoed through the underground command center and across countless screens. "We have shown them that humanity will not be conquered. But this is not the end. The galaxy knows we exist now. They will come again." He paused, his gaze steely. "And when they do, we will be ready." Across the planet, humans prepared for what was to come. Factories worked tirelessly, producing more ships and weapons. Scientists pushed the limits of alien technology, creating defenses even the galaxy's greatest empires couldn't comprehend. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were stepping onto the galactic stage, and they were doing so as equals. Final scene. In the depths of space, Xalthor sat alone in a dark chamber aboard a small Imperial outpost. He had been stripped of his rank, his warnings ignored by his superiors, but he didn't care. He had seen the truth, and it haunted him. As he gazed out at the stars, he whispered to himself, "They never expected humans to be this deadly. But now, the galaxy will never forget."